the most antique professions have managed to be safeguarded due to regulation, archaic, or due to cultures or society practices that have accepted certain behaviors and certain old and ways of behaving. These five areas are health, education, legal, government, and the way in which religion is organized. Without a doubt, the first three are the ones that will be most heavily impacted in the years to come, due to the fact that in the other two, we have moral and ethical issues that actually bring that discussion to a different level than today's talk. But the first three, I am starting to see that from the San Francisco Bay, and I think that that is a true expansive wave that will hit everywhere. The second group of conclusions is first that the innovation ecosystem and venture ecosystem in Latin America must be completed and must fill three gaps that must be tackled or filled. The first one, I had already said, it's corporate venture capital, which needs to participate more using open innovative criteria onto how to use the strengths that it has and complement them with new areas, new technologies, new products, new services, new markets, which is what actually brings from startups. This is what startups optimize. Secondly, stock options should be used much more. Shift the mindset of employee to owner. Even the cleaning people should be committed, not due to their salary, but due to the fact that they are committed to the construction of a big company and have those benefits. We still have big limitations, cultural, fiscal, in order to understand the value of stock options in Latin America. And finally, another incomplete subject is the fact that we must learn and produce exits and more exits and more exits. And in order to have a culture of exits, we need an integration to global economies in order for them to see the potentials and the opportunities of our startups. The second element is that Latin America must focus in its core. What is the core of Latin America? The first core is to feed a hungry planet. In the next years, 2 years, we must actually surpass the barrier of 8 million inhabitants, then 9,000 million inhabitants, and for 2050, approximately 10,000 million inhabitants in the world. This population needs to eat, and Latin America has the proper conditions for producing not only commodities, but through ad tech and food tech, we can actually give the added value that technology can bring to feed the planet. Secondly, is to enhance or to actually supply for the needs of emerging economies, due to the fact that more and more people start getting to the middle class. This is an optimistic vision of the future, of course, where not only we will have 10,000 million people, but hopefully most of them will have an equitable and they will be benefited from everyone's prosperity. There will be equality. A middle class that grows demands better services, better education, better diets, better food, better health. And we could supply that not only for our own citizens, but also for the citizens around the world. We must also recognize that Latin America will not be the leader of extraordinary vanguard tech. Although every time we talk about self-driving, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, drones, although that is in our top of mind, we must recognize that what we know how to do is to find novelty applications for local needs. The technology created in the great tech centers around the world are created and they become widespread almost instantaneously. So we must be leaders in the novelty applications that actually tackle specific needs of the market. For the development of our venture ecosystem, we must put Latin America in the map of big investors who have traditionally never invested in the region. And obviously, in order to make this attractive for big investors, we must improve our predictability, feasibility, transaction costs in order to become competitive with other ecosystems. And finally, we must boost the connection of Latin America and Peru south-south. What does this mean? We are going into a new era where historically Europe and the US were in charge of arbitrage, and they obviously benefited from the South-South connections. I think that the democratization of the markets, Latin American actually goes straight to Asian and African markets and other emerging markets in order to establish our own conditions, our direct conditions, with more than 3,000 or 4,000 million consumers around in those areas. So in order to close, I would like to bring or go back to four of my main messages that I proposed at the beginning. The first one is oriented for entrepreneurs. COVID-19 is actually speeding change and has brought new winners and new losers. To investors, we have new responsibilities. Be actually important stakeholders. And more important than that, we have to be agents of change. To government employees, to public employees, to the employees of our regulator agencies, we must reimagine the regulatory framework, which is already obsolete, or that will be obsolete in the next months, or that COVID-19 actually brought their death beforehand or before time and actually changed them in order to have a total and sustainable benefit, opening the doors to entrepreneurship and innovation. And finally, business people. Even those that feel benefited from COVID-19. For example, in my telecommunications career, I was also benefited when in the 90s, fax machines actually made us invincible and our market actually skyrocketed. But we must be honest and recognize if that is a trend, if that is a stable trend, or if that is just a passing trend. That is the end of my presentation, and I would like to give you one of my favorite phrases, and it's an invitation to everyone to recognize that luck favors the prepared minds. Thank you very much. Carlos, thank you very much for giving us the context of venture capital in Latin America, especially now in the COVID context. Thank you for illustrating us based on the experience that you have, the trajectory. I have been able to listen to you when you came to Peru in the past in order to be an evangelist for venture capital. To ask you a couple of questions to actually synthesize the people that are listening from YouTube, I would like to apologize for the inconvenience we have had, but now our platform is working perfectly. You can access from the web. Carlos, I have one question. Although we have had a big advance in the last years in Peru, when you share this information, I have a doubt. What are we missing in Peru in order to reach the levels of our neighbors? For example, how can we be more successful in terms of exits and unicorns in Peru? The problem of exits, the problem of the region, and it's a problem of that has to be solved. And it must be solved if this is going to be sustainable. Not a problem of Peru. I think that we're going to have to act together, all the venture funds, in order to work together and establish a global forecast and projection for our companies. Moving on to unicorns, it's obviously a local problem for each one of the ecosystems in order to develop these startups to become extraordinarily successful. And it's to think big. I think that there's no other way around it. An entrepreneur that only thinks locally, and if I do well in Peru, I'm going to send it to Ecuador, to Chile, or to Bolivia. And an entrepreneur that thinks about a regional solution will never become a unicorn. And the Peruvian entrepreneur or the Latin American entrepreneur that has a great idea and that he sees that idea possibly implemented in Europe, in India, or in the US, that is the entrepreneur that will actually create a unicorn. Thank you, Carlos. I want to ask you another question, also related to Peru. In Peru, we have launched some public funds in order to boost venture capital. In Chile, for example, and we have been doing it for quite a while, and US Alaya are beneficiaries of that fund. From your perspective, how do you think this will have an impact? This fund of funds will have an impact in our local ecosystem. I think that it's going to have a positive impact. Only if the regulator has a clear projection or a 5 to 10 year forecast into what they're trying to do. What do I mean by this? I always say that the regulator is the one that handles and actually leads the way and makes actually to have a clear path. It's not an additional player in the field. It's not the player in the bench. The main players are the different stakeholders of the ecosystem, specifically the entrepreneurs. But obviously, each one has its role. But the regulator is not a player. The regulator should actually construct the stadium and the field for a successful game. And how should I organize my stadium and my playing field for my stadium to be the best stadium in the world? Or the next Silicon Valley in Latin America. So the function of the regulator is to have that vision and to recognize that they're not players. They are in charge of coordinating elements. In this case, actually facilitating the creation of venture capital in order to build this great stadium. That's my sports analogy. Great analogy, Carlos. I want to ask you a final question. And due to the fact that today we are connected to future startups and to people that want to be investors in venture capital, what would you like to have known that you know now when you started being a venture capitalist? What would you tell the Carlos of the past? Listen, without a doubt, us, when we created our first fund, which was the first one in Argentina, in Cordoba, we did what actually every entrepreneur does. we created our minimum viable product. It was a fund 10 times smaller than the one we have right now. And we actually had great energy. We had all the willpower. But obviously, with all that willpower, we also became aware of a lot of flaws and mistakes that we made in the selection of the companies. And at the end of the day, everything goes or everything is impacted by the quality of the entrepreneur. I mean, if I tell you about my learnings and my insight, we must choose a team, not an entrepreneur. Although we have a lot of studies and studies and studies that have shown that the perfect number for a startup is 2.3, 2 or 3 co-founders in the startup. Co-founders with core competencies that are different. A technical, a marketer, a finance person. That is the first element, 2.3. And secondly, to choose a pain point of the market, a real big global pain point. I would say that those are the two main criterias in order to choose a successful startup. And sometimes you can see that we actually choose for a product that is already in the market for due to the fact that they have some revenue. Sometimes we take them because we can actually touch the prototype because it was very close geographically. And we actually forget about the two main elements, which are the ones that I just mentioned, co-founders and global pain points. I think that having a team, a potent team, a powerful team with a global mindset, with an open mentality to the planet, and that can see their product and their services in every corner of the world without fear, fearless, and also something that tackles everything. I always say that entrepreneurs are the suppliers of aspirin. They're the suppliers of aspirin. Why? Because the headache is a generalized headache. Everyone has headaches. Everyone in the world will have a headache. And if it's a migraine, the better. Why? Because there's more demand for my aspirin. So you have to identify a common pain point in society and finance those entrepreneurs that are preparing or building or fabricating or manufacturing aspirin. Carlos, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your advice, for your perspective. We loved your presentation. Unfortunately, this is the end of this segment, but we thank you for your time and for the valuable work that you have doing for the venture capital ecosystem. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I truly hope that my presentation, that you like my presentation. Thank you very much. Of course, in fact, in YouTube, they're congratulating and thanking you. Now let's move on to Luis Narro and the panel that he will moderate and share. Thank you very much for your time. Hi, Jaime. Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. We're going to do a double click in the startup venture funding. As you can see, the ecosystem is comprised by several actors. We have the entrepreneurs, without a doubt, who are the center of the ecosystem. But we also have a group of rock stars that are supporting the entrepreneurs to have the best practices, the best connections. And in order to do that, we're going to have a panel with different actors. Representative of the accelerators, Jose Deusta. Then we will listen and talk to Elizabeth Acuna from Angel Ventures, who has a very nice story, starting as an angel investment network, and now they operate more as a venture capital fund. And we also have Megan Sinclair from Inca Ventures, who will strictly act as a venture capital fund. So while you start connecting, I would like to thank you for your patience, to thank you for your understanding. We are obviously improving our technical aspect. Thank you for staying here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions, for engagement. Please ask questions. I do have some questions for the panel, but we will obviously be on the lookout of new questions. And I would also like to thank our sponsors. This space will not be possible without BitLab, AWS, Inca Venture, Cofitnet, Lombardia Consulting, and Luaida. So thank you very much. The floor is yours. Eli, Jose, Megan. We have a concept of cycles of startup investment, which starts at early stages and it starts evolving and involving different stakeholders. So I wanted to ask you if you could explain, Jose, what is the role of accelerators? Eli, what is the role of the networks of angel investors and venture capital without going into detail so much in order for Megan to be available to talk about the role of funds? Thank you, Lucho. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with all these great investors, women, Elizabeth and Megan. Amazing. Okay. Utech Ventures, we go in the earliest stage. As a university, we created a program in 2014 for investing in early stage startups. So I am the first investor of startups in Peru. And we look for startups that are at a very early stage. We usually go in their first sales, where they have a couple of sales, but they haven't found their market fit. So we take a big risk, but it's also pretty much related with the idea of our main investor, which is the university, which wants to foster entrepreneurship, technology entrepreneurship. So it's a mission, if I might say, a social mission also, to support tech entrepreneurs, to support early stage tech entrepreneurs, and obviously through capital or with capital. Eli. Hello, I'm very happy to be here and to tell you a little bit more about the perspective from Angel Ventures. We, in Angel Ventures, we started as Angel Venture Network. And with time, we started to build venture funds. So we have operations in Colombia and Mexico and Peru. And the importance of angel venture networks is very important. UTEC is the next, we are the next stage from the companies of UTEC Ventures. There's a lot of connection between mentors who are members of the angel investor networks up to thank you very much, Elizabeth. I also want to thank everyone for being here. Our VC is focused on tech startups with generating returns that you won't have on traditional return, like fivefold or tenfold. So we go in Inca, we are seed investors also, but we have there are investment funds or venture capital funds in every single stage. Usually we come in after an accelerator like UTEC. So there are several reasons why someone would like to invest in VC. Usually, obviously, it's very high returns. Venture capital funds make big risk investments, obviously going after very big returns in comparison to other types of things. It's very important to recognize associated risk to this type of investment. More than 70% of the startups fail. But if a venture capital firm invests $20 million, $2 million for 20% of the company and they sell the company for $200 million, you could have a 10-to-1 return. It's a little bit more complicated because there are different rounds, but I am explaining this although it has a high risk, it can also have high reward. Why should people invest in venture capital fund? It's because it's very difficult for a family office to do this because it needs more capital and discipline. But if they're not professional investors, so their work is to have a diversified portfolio. Secondly, for an investor to have a good portfolio and risky portfolio, he would have to invest in at least 30 startups to be diversified. That is very difficult when most of the angels are investing apart from their daily work. For VCs, it's their daily work. So it could be very difficult to have access to this type of tech investments. It's difficult to be in that world. For example, imagine that you wanted to invest in Snapchat or Rappi. Those transactions have big demand, and only people that knew someone or had the network could participate. That access is what a venture capital fund has. Some funds even give their LPs, their limited partners, the opportunity of sharing with them through specialized financial vehicles, which is similar to how an angel network works. This can be very attractive to the people that are trying to intensify their access to new markets. Thank you very much for your messages. I have two important concepts. This concept of risk profitability, which is actually the pillar of venture capital, obviously. High risk, high profitability, 70% of startups fail or more. And obviously, in terms of return of investment, we're talking about tenfolds, fivefolds, 20folds. Those are the big numbers that go behind the X, which is the expected return of investment by venture capitals. And for that return to become plausible and possible is another story. But in the structure of venture capital, that is what happens. High risk, high profitability. The other message that I take from this first part is the concept of why a fund and when is it more recommendable to use a fund. In backup, Jose said that at the beginning, last year, we were mainly an ecosystem that received angel investment. Now we're channeling investment through venture capital funds. And we also presented that as a signal of growth of the ecosystem. Because as Megan was saying, decisions are already in the managerial teams, which are daily analyzing investment opportunities. And at the end of the day, investors also, and going to your second point, investors also have opportunities to diversify their portfolios. So I wanted to do that comment for the people that are listening to us, and we're also awaiting your questions. Jose. Thinking about what Megan was saying regarding the value of investing through a fund, what would be the value for investors and for entrepreneurs of looking for investment possibilities through an accelerator? What is the value, the added value that you would have in those two audiences? Thank you, Lucho, for your question. I would like to add the variable of time. We must take into account that these investments take times for maturity. And obviously, the earlier, the better. I mean, the earlier, the better in terms of return, because this won't happen in the span of a year. But specifically in the Peruvian ecosystem, we're talking about 5 to 7 years, even more. So, Our thesis and our paradigm is to go in an early stage. When you go in an early stage, usually the same investment of money, you take a bigger participation. But obviously, everyone would like to have a bigger participation for the same amount of money. For the $10,000 to represent, 5% instead of 1%. But in order to do that, you must to know how to identify early stage investors, which requires a specific set of skills. So a program like our program, for example, is specialized in identifying early stage startups where you have very few metrics. And the other thing is that my program not only offers investment, our program offers a program of strengthening their skills, acceleration. So this acceleration program, giving a series of tools to the entrepreneur, ensures or looks to ensure a higher probability of success. Later on, we will maybe talk about what smart capital means. Smart capital, at the end of the day, is what every entrepreneur startup is looking for. They're looking for not only cash, but they want to have connections, networking, mentoring. So our program is focused on that mainly, in giving them the mentoring, the connections, and connecting them to investors to find investment in later stages. 50% of our startups have had investment after the program. So that is what we bring. That is what we specialize on, and that is that's what we do, different from Inca and Angel. Thank you, Jose. Very interesting in terms of smart capital. Sure. Let's talk about that. And Eli, I wanted to ask you, because I know that you as a network generate a very specific value to the investors and to the entrepreneurs. And also working as a fund, I know that in this time of the pandemic, many entrepreneurs are having trouble. But I have heard that Angel Ventures had a very important role working directly with the companies. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you, as a network, as a fund, generate value for the entrepreneurs. Yes, I can summarize my answer in two parts. We take a lot of the value that we look for is the search for these investment opportunities. That's our full-time job. So our work is more filtering and choosing those startups. We work as curators, in spite of a better word. We also try to help entrepreneurs. They're going to have a lot of meetings with investors, but we help them to have a short list and introduce them directly to investors that have a certain level of interest, that at least saw a teaser, that at least took a look at the deck, and based on that, we facilitate connections. So much of our work in that area generates connections, and it helps facilitate those transactions. And on the side of the investment fund, our role is a little bit deeper. Most of what we do with our entrepreneurs is to work with them hand in hand. And for example, the companies that are in Peru, help them to go to other countries in our other offices, depending on the Argentinian companies or other companies, help them to find clients. So we understand that understand very well that side of knowledge. We can actually tell them about the milestones that they need to hit, the material they need to prepare. And now with coronavirus, obviously our role should be to help them to find those first levels of cash flow, because it's very important and help them to reach a level where they can have at least 1 year of cash flow. And helping them to see what they can do. Also, emotional support. Being entrepreneurs, very tough. Yeah, so listening to them and helping them and being a helping hand is also important. Thank you very much, Ellie. I'm going to touch a couple of points. Number one, connection. You as Red and as a fund help that connection between the entrepreneur and the investor to actually become much more friendly. We have statistics which are not the best for entrepreneurs. So they go to 100 meetings and only one or two turn into an actual investment, and the rest are just good for experience. Also, I want to highlight the point of connection outside of Peru. We know that startups, we are asking them and telling them that Peru and that Lima and other regions should be an initial market, but we tell them that they must immediately tackle the world and Latin America. And an investor like you also help them in terms of networking and connections for the entrepreneurs. And finally, the concept that you talked about, the fact that this is an active investment. This is not just wiring the money and waiting for a year to have the fivefold or the tenfold. That number that goes before the X also depends on the value that the investor can give to the startup. So it's a very hands-on type of work, managing portfolios. And in COVID-19 circumstances, for example, the investor also has a very key role for the future of the startup. So Megan, I wanted to ask you on the same line, how do you foresee at Inca the value that you give both to the investor, if you have additional investors, or to the entrepreneurs that you have invested in? Regarding smart money, I would like to add that it depends on how we help startups. Just last week at Inca, we were helping some of the companies in our portfolio with some of their accounting, for example, because they were not speaking the same language as our accountants. That is a skill set that we have, for example. It's important to know that even though you have smart money is ideal, many of those skills don't actually happen. And I also want to mention the risks of people that bring the smart part, but not the money. For example, if someone wants to be a consultant or an advisor in your startup, keep in mind what's going to be the real added value. It's very important to have skin in the game, even if it's a very small percent. Everyone must be aligned. Yeah, because both of them should have something to win with the success of a startup. Remember that those skills should not depend on money. And if you give a percentage of your company to an advisor, for example, the standard of the industry is a part of the percentage. It's very important. Yes, without a doubt. It's a, I mean, it's a point for discussion at the end of the day. I agree with you. The value. The smart is important, but the money is also important. So the perfect mix is the smart money. So for the next part of the panel, I would like to move on from this type of methodology, and I would like to have an open question. Wait a second. I think Ellie was going to say something. Ellie, please. Yeah, on your point, on Megan's point, I think Having aligned interests is important, but before allocating percentages, you must know very well how the startup is working. I have heard about companies that have given 1 or 2% to an investor or to an advisor, and when you go and see the reality, the motivation is not there, or the commitment from the person is not there. So before allocating percentages or before giving percentages, take a step back, analyze things, have meetings in order to discuss it. But if you're investing, the commitment is much bigger. It can be a small investment, but it's something that you must actually analyze, and it generates a bigger link if you're investing. Yes, I fully agree. And that is what I wanted to say with the expression skin in the game. We have had very bad experiences, I agree, with investors that have wanted to capitalize services into shares. Because how can you measure the quality of a service? How do you know that you got the best quality service? So, my recommendation there, our recommendation to the founders is, if they give you a money, if you're going to hire someone, try to come to an agreement that you must hire him before the competition. But first of all, get money. But because the entrepreneur is the one who knows where to spend the cash. Yeah, so exchanging services for equity. If you need to exchange media for equity, it's not a good idea. For example, it's better to have cash to invest it in what actually going to generate an actual return of investment for the investor. So you have to be very careful. Jose, Megan, and Elizabeth, it's very interesting. I think that it's an important message for all entrepreneurs. As a general concept, value your capital. That's the first insight. Don't sell your capital speedily at the beginning, even if you have an attractive offer. And then focus on the value, skin in the game, commitment that those third parties that want to become part of the startup should have. As I was telling you, I wanted to break the order now, or break our scheme, and I wanted to talk about the overlap that we might have between accelerators, networks, funds. How can a startup, for example, that starts being accelerated by tech ventures, can then be subject to investing by other types of investors from other angel ventures, or from other types of venture capital firms, or other type of organizations? And how from there can you move on to a fund like Angel Ventures, like Inca, like Senkantai, like other funds that are part of the Peruvian ecosystem? I'm going to give you two names, Fitco and Manmoto. And if you want, I wanted to. That's the way. That's the path. We have two very good investors here in the call, which are Angel Ventures and Inca Ventures. When my startups leave the accelerator program, they go directly to them. The only thing is that Inca is more fintech oriented. So if you're not so fintech, it wouldn't be Inca. But all of them go there. They are two very good opportunities for investment. And in terms of angel networks, also, Ellie will talk about that better, but Megan can also talk about that. Investment rounds post acceleration are between $100,000 and $200,000, or $300,000, or $500,000 tops. I think that all those rounds are rounds that Inca and Angel would be interested in. So they participate very well, and they are investors, which I think that any type of Peruvian entrepreneur that complies to the requirements should go to. And I am sure, because I know Ellie and Megan, I am sure that they will listen to them and they will get feedback, and they might invest in them. If they don't invest in them, they will get great feedback, both from Inca and from Angel. So in order to close, I think that any person that wants investment and has revise Angel Ventures and Inca Ventures to see if you can see eye to eye to them. Knock on their door. And if you don't get money, the worst case scenario is that you will learn, you will get great feedback, and maybe you can close an investment. Ellie, Megan, do you have something to comment on what Mr. Jose said? I think that Jose was right on the dot. I want to take this short time in order to talk about something that Jose said, which is do your job. Do your job. Jose said that it's very important to do your job. For example, we as Inca Ventures, we invest in fintech. We also in Peru have Angel Ventures and Sancandai and Impa Ventures. Yeah, thank you very much. They're more in Series A, maybe before Series A, but they're more focused on Series A investments, and they have a very specific scope. Santa Kai also goes into Series A, Inca Ventures, like us. They are more focused on seed investment. So it's very important to analyze where every fund likes to invest and what is their thesis. Are they specialized in a specific sector for investment? Or if there are other funds that are more focused on what your startup does. That is the homework that you should do before knocking on the investor's door. It happens that some startups go for capital from every single venture fund. And as you mentioned, Luis, we have co-investment cases. For example, we have different companies that have co-investment from us and from Angel and from others. Yeah, some of the points that you mentioned, I think that there are certain startups that have gone through the different organizations. There's a startup that was an Endeavor, there was an OTEC, then we invested, then 500 startups invested. So there are a lot of startups. Now they moved to Techstars. So we have a lot of startups that move around the different VC firms, and they have found benefits due to the fact that they have gone through the different growing stages with different partners. And as an entrepreneur, it's important to go through the different programs and to understand what are you taking out of every single program. No, it takes a lot of time to move from one company to one acceleration program to another. So you have to actually analyze very well if this is going to be important. For example, I have Get On Board, which is one of the companies of our portfolio. It was in UTech, then it moved to another place, then it came to us. So we had another type of founder, and the founder didn't go through acceleration in Peru. They went to 500 startups and they went to Chile. So every entrepreneur is a world of its own and it has a very specific program. Entrepreneur, so it depends on the needs. As always, I recommend the founders to wait the most amount of time before going for outside capital. That is my advice. As Jose and Ellie said, there are different ways in which you can look for tools or for mentors or for capital. If you can wait for having a bigger traction, you can have better results. You can give less equity from your company. So that's an advice for the entrepreneurs. Wait before you go out looking for investment. Can I make a couple of comments, Luis? One is co-investment. It happens in the Peruvian ecosystem. We have a lot of co-investment, and that is part of the work that PECAP does. One of our acceleration programs, the financer has been the board. The board is an angel investment firm that has a fund now. They decided to go into an early stage program, and at the end of the day, we have those opportunities. And those are co-investment opportunities that we have. There are different alternatives. For the different profiles of investment. And this is related to what Megan said, to do your homework. The other important thing, specifically for the people that are just beginning, is that getting investment does not mean that this is your first date and then you get married. It takes time. It takes time. You're going to have a lot of interviews. You're going to have a lot of conversations. Sometimes they're going to tell you, listen, you're too early. I'm not interested, but you make the contact. So if you have a plan in your startup that you're going to need funding at any given moment in the future, start contacting them now. Call Ellie. Look, Ellie, I'm just starting. This is my product. This is my team. I would like to add you to my mailing list. Are you open to that? And Elizabeth can tell you, sure, add me to your mailing list. And maybe 3 months later, you go back. Hey, Ellie, remember that I wrote to you 3 months later. I'm thinking about opening a round. What do you think? And when you open your first round, Ellie already knows you. She has seen your traction. She has seen your company. So as Megan say, don't wait for the last minute of the last day. Do your job. Relationships take time. They have moments. You must start the relation early on. When you get the money into your account, you're getting married for life. Okay? You're going to have a constant relationship. Excellent, Jose. I think that it's a very important message because sometimes we feel that the investor is a type of a human being that is only making investment decisions in a special place. But at the end of the day, the investor is a human being. So harvesting relationships is as important as any other industry. As you said, it's a long-term process. But the faster you begin, be it as a mentor, be it as a WhatsApp message, be it as your pitch stage, it's good. I also want to highlight that the ecosystem, this is a personal opinion, this is a collaborative ecosystem. What does this mean? You can send a message to Ellie, Jose can contact Ellie, and if there is an entrepreneur that wrote to you and you see a better fit with another firm, you can just submit them there. Because I think that we are in that part where stakeholders know each other, collaborate, and work together with the goal of the growth of the ecosystem. I didn't want to miss this opportunity in terms of the point of contact. As PECAP, as you know, we have a list of members, which is in the web. It's pecap.p/miembros, and you will find a document with information in terms of where are funds investing, what do they like to invest in, why do they prefer one or another, and we also have contact information. So any entrepreneur interested in contacting the associates of PECAP, you can do it through that document that is in our website. We have 2 minutes left in order to close the panel. I wanted to leave an open mic for you to give a final message to entrepreneurs and even to investors that are with us here today. Okay, I can start. My last message is the following. We have talked about a lot of things, very valuable, entrepreneur, investor, but I would close with a message for investors. Every time we have more people interested in going into venture capital, define the role you want to have as an investor. If you want to be a passive or a silent investor and do it through a fund, if you want to get involved with the startup, maybe you can invest through an angel network. What do you want to achieve? Do you want only a financial return? Do you want to learn? Do you want to embark on a journey? What you want to do. Analyze that. The level of involvement in an angel fund is different than in a traditional venture capital firm, and define the level. For example, listen, I want to go in when the company is already big, when I just want to put fuel into the company, or I want to come in when the startup is building their product or their service. So there's a very big opportunity in constructing different types of investment vehicles, different investment methodologies, different investment models, debt, revenue sharing, sales, etc. So there are a lot of things to do. And from Pickup, and now I will put on the hat of Pickup, we are very happy and delighted to explore opportunities. And if you want to visit us, if you want to come to us, if you want to contact us, please write to Lucho or to me in order to grow this private equity and venture capital market. Ellie, my message is oriented towards entrepreneurs. Something that I want to say is that we're building an ecosystem, which every time we have more investment, when you're trying to get funding, don't think from a country perspective, but try to go to different investment firms. There are a lot of investment firms and programs that are very interesting. Analyze your investment potential scenarios and do your homework. Do your homework. Raising capital is difficult. And if you have the biggest roster of potential investor, the more meetings, the more networks, the more contacts you have, you will improve your possibilities, you will improve your pitch, you will improve your raising capital probability, and at the end of the day, you will have more skills and a better possibility for investment. Although smart capital is important, if you can choose and have a balance of the investment that you need, that's the best way to go. Yeah, if you need strategic capital or smart capital, make a good selection depending on what you need. Or if you have a good fit in terms of individual relationships, it might work. Try to find that perfect balance and not look for only strategic investors. Thank you, Ellie. I agree with everything that you have said. I just want to add, as Jose was saying before, if you want capital, ask for advice. If you ask for advice, you will know the investor in depth, and you will both make a decision if there's a good fit, because he will know your company and you will know the investor. If you want to connect with me, you can look for me in LinkedIn, as Luis said. There's also a directory and the webpage of Pickup, but I prefer LinkedIn. And if you want to connect with me, write a note in LinkedIn telling me why you want to connect and what you want to talk about. That helps a lot. When I see connections from people that I don't know, I don't accept them. Thank you very much. We're ready for the next panel. In fact, it's going to be focused on investors and who are these people behind the investments in order to debunk the myths of the investors of venture capital in Peru. So I would like to thank you now, Jose, Ali, Megan. Thank you very much. It has been a very interesting panel. I hope that for the audience, it was also interesting. I would like to leave with my message, my personal message. We are convinced that there is a lot of talent in Peru. There is a lot of talent. That is why we have this type of group to help. I think that a message to Peru Capital Series, this is the 3rd edition, but when we began, we talked about mindset. that we must have at all levels: entrepreneurs trying to move around the world, investors also that have to support entrepreneurs, just to actually double down on that message. Sometimes we start thinking, how can they help me? How can I get help? Personally, I think that we all have the tools to reach that level of success. Thank you very much, Megan. And thank you to everyone that has connected here today. Thank you very much. I'm back. I'm back. I would like now to invite Harold Marcener and Santiago to be with us in the next call. Santiago, Harold, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for being here in the third stage of our event. Hi, how are you? Thank you for the invitation. I'm very honored to be here to share this first 3 years as an angel investor. Thank you, Lucho, for your invitation. Thank you very much for being here. First of all, I would like to talk about what we're going to talk about. Harold Marcenaro and Santiago Pardo are both angel investors with a wide experience in startup investing. The objective is to listen to their experience. What motivates them to invest? A series of questions, and we're also going to get your Q&A, and I will send them to the investors. So without any further ado, Santiago, please start. I wanted to ask you, Santiago, what have been the initial motivations that you have had in order to invest in startups, and why have you become part of this world, Santiago? Okay, my story with investment starts after I fail with my own startup. I define myself as an entrepreneur disguised as an investor. After the failure of my startup, I start analyzing what would be my next step as an entrepreneur. And I find a lot of things. The first things I find is that I wanted to have a disruption in different areas: health, sports, work, vocations. There were a lot of things that I was interested in. And for me, it was more important than ever to generate an impact in human beings through technology. As they tell you in Singularity University, I wanted to create a $1 million company to impact 1 billion people. But my rational part also taught me that my real probabilities of having a company at that level were very low. So I started thinking about how can I elevate that ratio of success. And that is where I discover that in reality, I shouldn't only trust my ideas or invest in my ideas, but I could trust in other ideas and invest in other people's ideas. And as an entrepreneur, that tipping point is not so easy. So from there, my mission started to transform, and I started to try to become part of other startups, which were already making progress, who were already on the right track in topics that were relevant for me. So that is how I became part of this. Wonderful. It sounds very interesting, Santiago. Later on, you're going to tell us a little bit about the story that you have in terms of investment, especially in the United States, right? But I want to get to that point in the next question. Harold, how did you become a part of this investment ecosystem, and what motivates you? What are your drivers? I am a frustrated entrepreneur, to be honest. I did an MBA in the United States between 1999 and 2000, the dot-com era, and I was fascinated with the energy in the United States, the possibility of changing the world through technology. I had a couple of attempts as an entrepreneur while working at some .coms, which were a big disappointment. And then I said, I went into the corporate world. I work in a bank now in order to learn how a big company works and then start my startup. What happened in reality, it became very interesting. And I have been working in my job for 20 years. But what I have seen now with mobility revolutions are new opportunities of that energy. I'm seeing the same energy that I saw 20 years ago. So I said, I want to be part of this, but now as an angel investor. Since 2016, I have carried out 24 investments in different countries of the region, the United States. I'm not an expert yet. I haven't had a big exit. I have had some small exits. I have had a couple of write-offs. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for being here. The first question that I have for you is, when an investor invests in a startup, we know that it's usually a tech startup. We know that it's an investment in a company that doesn't have any big assets. It's not like you have collaterals, but it's just an investment that goes directly to expenses. So it's an investment that actually has no backup in fixed assets. It's very risky. Do you share that premise? How do you carry that premise to when you're actually signing the check? I follow the premise of invest amounts that you will have that you will be. How to calculate your high investment risks is to take 5% of your full equity, diversify it between 25 companies in 2 years. And the worst thing that could happen is for you to lose to 5% of your whole estate, or even do a 10x or a 50x or a 100x. So my main premise is your appetite. What are you willing to risk or invest what you could recover in 1 year with other investments? Yeah. But you have to be realistic. Most of startups fail. And that is why it's so important to have this analytical mindset, like the barriers that you will have to overcome, especially financial barriers. But you must also add a new component, which is the following. Is it worth running such a big risk? How important is the pain point that the startup is solving? How important is that problem for you? How important is for the founders to solve that problem? Or how intelligent are the founders? And what do the founders know that you don't? Or another way to put it, what competitive advantage do the founders have in order to solve a specific pain point of society? I think that that analytical component is key. But there's also a higher purpose. You must assess the higher purpose or the solution that this company wants to bring into the world. So these are two things that you must assess very, very, very precisely, especially in such a early stage. Harold, what are your views when investing in this type of things? I agree with Santiago. It's a high risk investment. Hence, you can only risk what you can afford to lose. I have a bigger risk appetite, so I have 13% in my portfolio invested as an angel investor. But I would add that you can't do it only for money. I believe that you must have bigger connections with your investments. In my case, I am motivated by being connected with talented people that fills me with energy. And that makes me feel like I am contributing to my country, to be honest. So that for me is also very important. If it's only money, I wouldn't be an angel investor. Commenting on your question and commenting on the number of investments you have, Harold, It's recommended to investors that started becoming venture capitalists to invest a small amount of money in many startups to actually have a higher spread. Do you agree with that? Do you think that is the way to go? Harold, what do you think? Yeah, I agree. It's a learning that I have had when I started in this area. I want to do 4 or 5 investments, like big investments, and have more participation in those 4 or 5 companies. I was convinced that I was betting on the winning horse. They were so great that I said, this is a sure win. And in fact, of those, one already failed, the other one is struggling. So many things happen in life, in business, that it's impossible to actually forecast. So the other thing that I learned is that it's not only about initial investment. You have to do follow-ups. You need to put more money on the way to help the startup. So if you invest 10, you must know that you're going to need to put 10 or 20 more in the way. That changed my strategy. I lowered my tickets big time, like 10 times, but that allowed me to have much more investments in a higher number of startups. Santiago, what do you think about that? Without a doubt, that's the most intelligent thing to do, especially when you start investing. You know that most startups will fail, so the less money you lose, the better. So I think it's the best way to actually support that. That is why it's important to have that right of keeping your percentage in future rounds of investment. That's very important, because if you're at a very early stage at the first bet and the company starts growing, you are still part of the company that is growing. Mhm. So, but what does investing a little in a lot of companies mean? I think that it depends on the money that you want to allocate, the money that you are willing to lose. And I think that there are investment mechanisms for every type of pocket. You can have $2,000 tickets or $1,000 tickets up to $100,000 tickets. So it depends on what you're willing to invest. I think that there are ways of putting a low ticket in a lot of companies. From board, we try to bet on startups based basically, uh, it's a cliche, I know. For me, it's totally real, and that's the focus that we have here in the company. We look for entrepreneurs more than the project, because we know that a startup that has good entrepreneurs will change during its life. It will pivot, and a good entrepreneur can take it to the right place. I'm not saying that all entrepreneurs are not good or that we discard good or bad entrepreneurs, but that is how the board works. Do you feel that the entrepreneur should be actually the most important thing, or the idea, or the company? Or what value do you give to each one? We can start with you, Santiago. Yeah, there is a phrase that a good idea is destroyed by bad teams, but a good team can make a bad idea better. So yeah, without a doubt, in all businesses, this is about people. It's an investment in people, not in ideas, more than in ideas. So for me, the component, I like to do this analysis in a word that is trust. How much can I trust the team? How honest is that team? What is the commitment of that team? And in order to do that, I focus myself in 3 main things. The first one, how personal or how intimate is for them to find a solution. What do I mean by them? They need to have a very intimate relationship between the founders and the problem. If they don't have that, from my experience, it won't work. What knowledge do the founders have of the people that have the problem? Yeah. How do they know their market? That gives me trust. They know the problem so well. They know the habits of people so well that they can perfectly tackle a problem. Also, if they have the right people in order to execute the idea. This is the team. Sometimes they don't have it, but if the founder is aware of what he doesn't have, that's a big progress. So those three elements for me are what generate trust in people. Because at the end of the day, you're investing in people. Harold, in that line of thought, what do you think? I would like to add something else based on what Santiago was saying. Have you seen investment in startups with a single founder versus startups with more founders? Does that also have an influence in your investment decision? Please. I agree with the premise. The team is the most important thing. Investing in people. And when we talk about that, for me, what I'm looking for is capabilities of the team for execution and for pivoting. Or for iterating. So I expect to invest on a team that has a track record that can generate hypotheses, test fast. It's different to test a couple of hypotheses in 2 weeks than to test 1 or 2 hypotheses in a quarter. That makes the path and the exponential growth very, very different. So for me, that is the most important thing. And if they do have those capabilities, even though the idea might not be perfect, they will find the way to bend that idea through their iterations in order to be successful. With that said, I do have some topics that are attractive to me, obviously personally, and obviously I look for that, things that I can personally connect with. For example, I am interested in education. On the other side of I cannot do investments in fintech because I would have a conflict of interests because I work in a bank. So it's not that the space that I like is something important also. Regarding the teams, yes, I have read about the literature. In my personal experience, I don't see a big difference between single founding teams or startups that have several founders. I know companies that have a single founder that are successful and that have failed. I know companies that have 3 founders that have succeeded or that have failed. But I know that literature says that it's better to have a team. I know that standards say that it's better to have a team. Yeah, I understand that. But what is your experience? Tell me about your experience. That is the nice thing about this type of panel. Do you have a specific experience regarding investing in teams or in sole entrepreneurs? I have invested for many years in myself, and most of the times I have failed. It's important for me to have a team, at least 2 or 3, to be very honest. I usually look for 2 or 3 founders because as an entrepreneur, you need someone's shoulder to cry on. You need help. You need support. So for me, it's very important to have at least 2 entrepreneurs in the founding team. You need that extra motivation. You need someone to dig you out of the hole. It's a harsh life, and pressure is hard. Regarding investors, regarding your workers, regarding your team is tough. The product. So I do look for founders that have at least 2 or 3 founders. A single founder is a bad sign for me, to be honest. And it's something in Peru and in Latin America. In Peru, one of the things that I see with the teams is that it's not easy to find co-founders. And if you don't have the right team, it's very difficult to achieve your milestones and be flexible. So there is a topic in terms of the importance of the team. Only founders is not a good idea. Only one founder is not a good idea, excuse me. So I do see that you have to do a lot of analysis before your first investment, right? Harold is very interested in the idea, the business idea. There's a lot of analysis to be made. That's very interesting. So investing at the level that you do is a full-time job. How much time do you dedicate to revise the startups before investing? Harold, I usually 2 or 3 hours a week is the time that I allocate for this. It's not so much, Luis. And I make a decision in 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, I make my decision. Usually, what I do is that I do some research on my own, maybe 30 minutes. And then in a 30-minute conversation with the startup, I decide to invest or not. Usually, after 10 minutes of a conversation, I know what I want and I confirm according to their answers. Right now, I dedicate most of my time not to choosing, but to helping the companies that are part of my portfolio. That I dedicate much more time. I have companies that I have startups that don't need so much my help, and other startups call me, they ask me, or I contact them. So it depends on the relationship and on the skills. Another good mechanism that I have discovered in time to make this more efficient and more fruitful is to participate in groups or funds or specific investment groups that makes work much better, much easier. And it allows you to actually leverage on other people's knowledge and diversify and make smaller investments. So what I have been doing in time is to not is moving from big investments to small investments and more grouped investments, if I may say. Santiago, in your case, how much time do you dedicate to analyzing startups? I dedicate the time that the company needs, to be honest. Sometimes I read the first mail and I say I'm not interested, or sometimes I need 2 or 3 meetings with the founder. Obviously, with time, I have learned to become aware of things that I want much faster, right? 4 or 5 companies get to my inbox every week. And in demo day times, Y Combinators and those times, MIT's, Harvard's, I can have 200 companies in a single week. So, but for me, the first discarding item is if the company or if the business idea connects with my purpose as an investor. Number one, because investing in startups is the way to reach to a higher purpose. That's how I see it. So a lot of pieces are part of the puzzle. So the first one is that one. Does the company can be amazing, but if it's not aligned to what I'm looking for in terms of technology to activate the potential of human beings, I'm not interested, or I discard it. The second law that I have is how innovative is the product or the proposal or the business model? How relevant can it be? How ingenious can it be? And from there, I ask for a meeting with the founder, and they start analyzing the other aspects, which are based on trust, as I said before. Mentioning what Harold said and what you're saying, Santiago, there are associations or support groups where investors can have support in order to do this curation of content and actually supply pre-analysis of the startups and maybe a search of companies with opinions from your counterparts. I understand that you both invest in startups in the US. From what I understand, Harold has also a local focus. Santiago, you're not so local yet. You look for US companies for now. How do you become involved in these investment groups? What benefits do you have of being part of these investment groups? Maybe if you want to talk a little bit more about that, Santiago, about how do you benefit from the investment groups that you have formed abroad? Yeah, I can start. I am part of different groups, and I am very thankful to those groups because those are they were the door for me to entering this world. So I am part of the board, and it's a way to do more investment. It's a channel to do more investments. Another group I was part of was Angel Ventures, and also the University of the Pacific, where I am a former student. I'm a part of the alumni. I also know the other groups here. All of them are part of Pickup. For example, UTech University can also be a good part to start, a good starting point, a good point of entrance. So those investor groups have helped me a lot. Another group that I have been part of, and I have done a couple of investment through Y Combinator demo days, which are also open to everyone and have a very, very well streamlined process. And for me, the last group, I did an MBA in Wharton. So in Wharton, there is an alumni angel investment group, and there I have also done investments. In your case, Santiago, how do you become involved with other groups and how do you leverage with those groups? Or maybe you don't. No, I do. They are very relevant. Locally, I try to attend all local demo days of local incubators that Harold mentioned. And without a doubt, uh, locally, um, angel networks is very important, and it's part of the checklist, which is important for me. So going to those angel investors is very important for me because there's a previous filter. It's different to connect with a founder if you don't know him. It's very difficult to meet a founder through an investor group. So it has a very important value. Internationally, where I have 100% of my investments, hopefully that changes with time. Just as Harold, I am connected to the Y Combinator network. I am part of the investment group Jason Tarakanis, which has a very good access. I follow Stanford, Design School of Stanford demo days. I follow them. MIT, Harvard, Innovation Lab. So, yeah, it's important to actually get leverage from the different investors groups that are looking for investors. And then I have started to build my own network based on my co-investors in the companies that I invest in because they have other types of access to that I don't have. And many times I ask for companies that get to my co-investors for other companies. So without a doubt, the whole idea or the goal is to make the most of the network that you can construct with people that have more experience, more time in the game, and for people that can give you knowledge. Listen, for example, I had this experience. This is what I learned. This is what happened to me. So this is very important to shorten your learning curve by supporting yourself with investor groups. A last question in the line of comparison between the startups that we see in the local ecosystems versus startups that we see in foreign ecosystems. You do investments in the United States, so I wanted to understand what differences do you see between local startups and foreign startups? We see companies maybe that are more innovators, or maybe you tell me we see companies that have bigger growth ratios. Can you talk to us a little bit about the difference between foreign startups and local startups? Things to improve, or maybe things that we are good at and that are worth mentioning. We can start with you, Santiago, because I know that you have a big foreign startup in your portfolio. Yeah, more than criticism or comparatives, I see when I started doing investments, foreign investments, I did it because I didn't find local startups. It was in 2017 where the ecosystem here was not so developed. But basically, I started to contact founders, local founders, and the first thing that I discovered is that they were making the same mistakes that I had made as an entrepreneur. So my role was not an investor. Now I was becoming a feedback giver due to my experience. But what I discovered with them was that I couldn't find a business idea, a team with the same purpose as mine. It wasn't relevant for me. Their proposals or their solutions were not relevant for me. So that is when I went to San Francisco and I started working. I started to try to find this investor network. But I believe that first of all is relevance. For me, it's relevance. Relevance of the problem that the startup is solving. That's, for me, the biggest question. That is why I ask to the entrepreneurs, am I inspiring the right people? Because I feel that there is a huge need from the co-founders. I feel that I connect with local teams that lack certain things, but it's difficult. It's not easy to find the right team. So how are you inspiring the right co-founders to join your team when you're the founder, a single founder? And in order to do that, I think that as a local entrepreneur, you need to find a way of shortening the learning cycle, shortening it very fast. Learn as fast as possible, the cheapest possible way, the fastest way. And that is where I think that we must have this idea that the people mentioned before, having that big vision. Start local, be sustainable, try to fail cheap and fail fast, but having a global vision. But I do think that we're missing that team component here in Latin America, having that global vision, having a foot here and a foot over there, not trying to solve a local problem, actually investigating what's happening around the world and starting from there. Yeah. Finding the proper stepping stones for my idea. So it's important to actually see what's happening around the world. Yeah, cooperation also is important. Sometimes it's something that I see in the US startups and that I don't find here locally. Sometimes we are very jealous, but it's important to have a component of cooperation. Don't start from zero. Connect to a company that already has something, and for me to come in and add value. Because as you know, technology is it's a speed war. If I don't collaborate with other companies, with other countries, even with the competition, it's going to be very difficult for an entrepreneur to reach the proper harbor and to reach growth in the United States. That is my vision. Harold, what do you feel as an advice, or what things do you see in foreign startups that local startups can actually use in order to become more attractive to an investor like you? The most important thing is to recognize the reality in that we are in a small country. Peru is a small country. That is the first thing. Okay? And even smaller in tech. So the business or the startup cannot be to do something local. If you must immediately aim to the world. So copying what worked in another country and bring it to Peru is not enough. You have to think about the global scale. So you have to think about something that is digital, that doesn't have something that is not brick and mortar, because escalating brick and mortar is pretty tough. Now, maybe you can focus on a specific niche, but a niche that if well replicated in different countries becomes big, okay? So that is the biggest difference for me. In the United States, they go for the American market, and that's enough. For us, that is not enough. I see some cultural differences. The rhythms of iteration that I see startups iterating in the United States is much, much, much faster than the one we see here locally. That's another difference in local startups that I have seen. In the US, they are constantly trying to improve. Here, locally, they're constantly trying to improve something, but in a very narrow space. I would like local startups to open their minds more to actually go fast into a big market. It's not Ecuador, it's not Bolivia, it has to be Mexico or something like that. A big market in which you can rapidly test your idea and your product, your MVP, but in a big market. Even in order to shut down ideas. I have had experiences in the US where after 6 months it didn't work, I closed it, they returned half of the investment money. Here I have seen that they go until the last stage. We're going to be successful. 2 more months, 3 more months, a little bit more. And this goes, same thing goes through years. I would like to see that fast decision-making process. That's a great point, Harold, to be honest, because I think that one of the problems that we have, especially in Peru, is that we have fear of failing, and we must remove that fear. The investors that invest in this stage know that they might lose their money. What they want is the entrepreneur to give its best to make that business possible. But if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. So here in the local ecosystem, sometimes we have startups. I call them the walking deads, because they were companies that they should have closed before. The entrepreneurs were good. They should have been in a different venture, but they were so fearful of telling their investors that they have failed. They try to keep on pushing an idea that is a walking dead for us. So it's a good advice to tell investors, listen, give it your best. Give it your best shot. If you see that you will not have extraordinary success, close it. But it's important to have that communication. And if you are on the same page, investors will probably be on the same page with you. And your goals will be aligned. And when you open a new business, investors will be willing to invest with you because you were honest, you had the courage, but you also had deadlines. And if you have a new investment or a new company, maybe other investors will go back and invest with you, even with their friends, because they know that you're a serious entrepreneur. Failing is not the end of the world. That is something that I take out of both of your talks. I have a couple of final questions from the audience. I want this to be a message both for entrepreneurs looking for funding and also for investors that are potentially looking for investing in startups. So first with entrepreneurs. They ask me, what requirements do startups need to have? Is there a checklist that you go through in order to define an investment or not? Santiago? For me, definitely the purpose. As I said before, what is the intimate relation between the founder and his team with the problem they're trying to solve? The pain point, right? Skin in the game, something like that, Santiago? Showing that they're part of the pain, showing that they understand the problem, or do they have any insight knowledge or skin in the game? That is what you refer to? There has to be an intimate relationship. For example, I invested in a company that makes software for depression, to help people with depression and with suicides. But to give you an example, the founder started this company because his brother committed suicide due to depression. So his relationship with the problem is so intimate. I am sure that even if they fail, he's going to give it his best to try to find a solution to the problem and bring a solution to the market. So that is what I refer to when I mention intimacy. It doesn't mean getting the typical phrase, don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem. I think also applies here. There must be a balance. but the topic of purpose and intimate connection is very relevant. And if I said 3, this would be the first one. The second one would be how innovative is the product? And thirdly, the team. If the team is ready to execute, and as Harold says, to iterate and to find a solution that they need to find. Very good. And in your case, Harold, what would you put as a checklist? I look for 3 things: an extraordinary team. Why can they solve the problem that makes them so special? What is their knowledge? How do they work, the team? Secondly, I want to see some type of track record, how they have iterated in the past. I don't know, we launched an MVP to the market, we learned X, we corrected in Y, we didn't do well, we corrected again. That story, it's not enough with having a good idea for me. And thirdly, that I personally connect to the startup. I don't have lists, but there are certain topics, certain verticals, certain spaces that I am very interested in, and others that I'm not. So entrepreneurs must knock on the door and see if they can find investors that have a connection with their story and be as transparent as possible. I think that a good thing that I see in the ecosystem here in the last years is that the fear of sharing ideas is something of the past, you know? I remember in the past, people thought that ideas were like a holy grail. Now, people are starting to share their ideas. I think that that's a good thing. People are more open to share their ideas. I hope that becomes a constant thing. On the other hand, Lucho, among investors, we also collaborate. So I have gone from, I have passed ideas or opportunities to acquaintances. I have also received good opportunities from other investors. So the spirit of collaboration is very important, and I see that. If an entrepreneur goes to a specific investors group, even if that investors group does not invest, that investors group will without a doubt submit him or submit her to other people that might be interested. Okay, let's close the chapter of entrepreneurs, and now let's close with the final question for investors. Final question. I have a couple of questions from the audience. What is the maximum amount? This is a little bit relative. I'm going to accommodate your reality. But what is the maximum amount that you invest in a company? This is relative because it depends according to the cash available. But in your case, what is the maximum amount that you invest in startups? And the second question is, from your investment portfolio, what is the ratio that you put on new investments and the ratio that you use for other investments? Santiago? I invest tickets between $10,000 and $25,000 tops, depending on the stage of the startup. And the ratio, of your full investment, how much money do you leave apart for follow-up investments? I don't have an exact number. I have 3 years of doing this. I have 15 investments, and through investment funds, maybe 80 companies. But but it's not. How can I explain this? I don't have a special amount for follow-ups or for initial investments. What do? I try to understand if it's worth doing a follow-on, and if I do it, I approach it as a new investment. That is my strategy. It's like reinvesting in the company from zero. That's how we do it, from scratch. That's my mentality. In your case, Harold, do you have a specific ratio? It's not that I do an initial investment and I leave some cash for the follow-on. But mentally, I do prepare myself. Okay, am I going to be able to do the follow-on in the future? And obviously, that determines the initial amount of the ticket. Okay, so to an initial ticket, knowing that it can double or triple the investment in the future with follow-ons, and I make my decision from the start. In many cases, it doesn't happen because when the follow-on comes in, I say, no, that's enough. This is not my area. But that's the mindset. I'm prepared to do it from the scratch. Yeah, very interesting. I want to close the panel with your final comments and any type of advice that you might be able to give to new investors or to people that want to invest in startups but that are not doing it. What advice would you give? Harold and then Santiago. I have two comments, one for entrepreneurs, one for investors. To the entrepreneurs, I would like to say a typical problem that I have found and that we haven't talked about is that it's very important for the software that you develop is done by yourself with your in-house team. I have seen a lot of situations in which startups want to go very fast and they don't have they start subcontracting the software. Total disaster, because that will never allow you to actually pivot and to go at your own speed. You want to do a change, the supplier left, you don't know how the tech works, it's a disaster. So develop your own software. Never, never, never subcontract or send it to a third party. Other things you can go to third party contracting, obviously, but not software. And for investors, or for the people that are thinking about becoming investors, do it. It's an incredible experience. It's a fulfilling experience. And I think that the best way to do it is by approaching the existing investor groups that are part of PICAP. They're in the PICAP website. For example, with the group of your university or with any other members that are there. It doesn't require big amounts of capital. You can start with $5,000 or $10,000, and it's not difficult. They're ready. Processes are set up. Processes are streamlined. Just let go, and it's a good way to start. So do it now. That's my message. Thank you very much, Santiago. Your final comment. I fully agree with what Harold said, and I think that the experience of listening and talking and getting to know people that are more intelligent than you, with people that have more interesting ideas than you, with people that are highly motivated in order to change the world and change the status quo is amazing, energizing, awe-inspiring. I enjoy the time that I talk and speak with entrepreneurs and with startups because without a doubt, you always understand and learn new things. You get new data, you get new info, and you always learn. You're constantly learning. So I would tell the people that are interested in investing, I would tell them to actually allocate money that you're willing to lose and find purpose, a higher purpose apart from investing and making money. Yeah, that's what it's about. Of course, investing and making money, but the purpose is important. That's the difference. You know what? I believe in health. I think that health should be disrupted. I want to invest in health, or I like commercial matters, and I want to invest in commercial companies because I want to be close to commercial talent. So always give purpose to your investment. It should always have a higher purpose, but it's very, very rewarding if you do it that way. And for entrepreneurs, I would say that you must also find a reason why you're starting your company. And that reason should be so powerful that it will inspire the people that will embark on that journey. Because at the end of the day, those are the people that will be with you there. It will help you make the best decisions. It will allow you to actually hire a person. It will make you help the decision-making process of everything. So basically, it will allow you to create the culture of the company from the scratch, why you do what you do. That's the most important thing. I thank you very much for your time. I think that this has been very fruitful, very insightful, real life experiences from entrepreneurs, from investors. So sometimes investors are seen as the evil part of the equation, but investors also have needs. Allocating a ticket in a startup sometimes, for example, means not taking a course or not doing something that they wanted to do. So I think that it's important to humanize investors and to know what the real motivations are. Um, Investors are different in the way they approach startups, in the way they approach investments, in the way they approach investment ratios. So it's important from our entrepreneur's standpoint to know how to reach investors, what type of investors are there, and to know that investors are there to actually help us. Knock on the proper doors, come to the board, come to the other associations of KEPAC, because when you knock different doors and when you go to investor groups is the best way to save time. And for the investors that want to be part of this new space, it's a very rich space. I have seen that investors invest in companies where they have a lot of knowledge. Maybe they have a lot of industry knowledge, and they can become great mentors, or sometimes into areas that they don't know anything about, but that they're passionate about. You like soccer, you love soccer, and you said, you know what? I'm going to put money into that startup that has to do with soccer, just for example. So it's like having an accelerated educational course in a specific industry where you will learn, where you will recover your money, where you will make money. So for me, it's very fun. First of all, it's very fun. Thank you for your time, Harold. Thank you, Santiago. It has been amazing to meet with you gentlemen today. Before we leave, I would like to remember our attendees, that although the day is over now with a break, keep in mind that we will connect at 3 p.m. with the investor training workshop from Six Stars, which starts at 3 p.m. It's not through this platform, it's via Zoom. So remember, we are closing the day in this platform and we will resume at 3 p.m. with the workshop. So don't hesitate to contact us if you want to participate. We still have time to participate. Please don't hesitate to do that, okay? So thank you very much. Thank you once again. And to all the people that are listening to us around the world, it has been a great day, great insight, great learning. And now, thank you very much for being here once again. Bye-bye. All the best. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Be safe. Bye. Thank you very much. If you want to contact me, do it through LinkedIn, via LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Yeah, also contact us via LinkedIn, please, through social networks of the board or through my email, which is lucho@theboardperu.com. Thank you very much. You can also look for me on Twitter, at Santiago Pardo. At Santiago Pardo in Twitter, in LinkedIn, Harmacenero, and the board also. Thank you very much. We will be very happy to help you. Please contact us, both investors and entrepreneurs. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Mar-